Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar on preparing the school water systems for fall reopening. Thank you very much for attending. Just as a reminder, attendees are in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. However, we do welcome your questions. Please type your questions into the question box and our presenters will address your questions during the session. As a reminder, this session is being recorded and it will be posted to the CSDE's COVID-19 webpage. I'd like to turn it over to John Frassinelli. John.
Hi, thank you, Michelle, and thank you everybody for joining. Welcome to this webinar series, and I want to thank our partners at the State Department of Public Health for joining us on this webinar to address water systems for fall reopening. As Michelle mentioned, there former webinars continue to be posted in their entirety on our website, so please look at that. We also have another webinar tomorrow that's going to focus on COVID-19 and contact tracing. So we're lucky enough to have our partners in water systems from the Department of Public Health. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Michael Hage from the State Department of Public Health, who's going to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you, John. Let's go to the first slide on our presentation. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Hage. I'm the Water Supply Section Supervisor at the Department of Public Health. I am just background on me, I'm a UConn graduate with a bachelor and master degree in civil engineering, and I'm also a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. I been with the Department of Public Health since 1984, and because of that, luckily I know a few things about drinking water supply. So I'm joined today by my colleague Mandy Smith, who is a supervising sanitary engineer in the drinking water section. Mandy was very instrumental in developing the DPH return to service guidance, and that's why she's here with us. She's going to cover a portion of this presentation, and also joining us is Tom Barger, who is the water quality manager for the Regional Water Authority in New Haven, which serves the greater New Haven area. Tom will give us the total perspective and important tips regarding water service to schools. So let's go to the next slide, if you don't mind, Michelle. Today's webinar, I'm going to go quickly through the agenda. We'll go over the health implications of low flow or no flow water in buildings, steps to consider before reopening, steps to get the school ready for reopening, and what to do when you are fully open and in operation. Now, a condition of no flow or low flow is also referred to as stagnant water. So you're going to hear me say stagnant water every now and then. Obviously, this condition or condition is inherently experienced by every school every weekend and during vacation weeks during the school year anyway. Let's go to the next slide, Michelle. So as you know, building and school closures for weeks or months reduce water usage, potentially leading, like I said earlier, to stagnant water inside the building plumbing. This water can become unsafe to drink or otherwise used for domestic purposes, cooking and stuff like that. For example, just to give you an idea, for optimal growth conditions, the optimal growth condition for undesirable pathogens like Legionella bacteria can occur when water temperature in pipes is between 70 degrees and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So, and especially when chlorine in the water is low or no DPAC. Turning on the water for immediate use after it has been sitting stagnant can really pose a risk to public health if not properly managed. Because turning on water after a prolonged period of no use could really disrupt the pipes and the plumbing scales to such an extent that microbial and chemical contaminants like manganese, lead, and copper could be released into the water. Also, water chemistry changes due to stagnation may cause the formation of disinfection byproduct contaminants. Here on this slide, you see the list of the contaminants of concern here. Legionella bacteria can cause a serious type of pneumonia called Legionnaire disease. And also there's also a less serious illness from it. It's called the Pontiac fever. Acinetobacter is also a bacterium that can cause infections in the blood, urinary tract, and lungs. Lead, as you all know, can result in behavior and learning problems, lower IQ and hyperactivity, slowed growth, hearing problems, and anemia. Copper can result in vomiting, diarrhea, stomach cramps, nausea, liver damage, and kidney disease. And obviously, kids with Wilson disease are extra sensitive to copper in water. Manganese at high levels is another issue, can cause problems with memory, attention, and motor skills for kids. Obviously, it's also more bigger problem for infants. Disinfection byproducts are really basically a family of chemicals formed when disinfectants react with naturally occurring organic matter and other substances in the water, and can get very elevated in stagnant water. Consuming it at high levels and definitely over a prolonged period of time, may lead to an increased risk for liver, kidney, and central nervous system problems, and obviously increased risk for cancer. Let's go to the next slide. Now, knowing all of these health implications, it's really critical for you to flush a stagnant water out of the school, out of your building before reopening. Before flushing and reopening, we suggest that you contact your water utility provider about local water quality and to coordinate maintenance activities. We'll be talking more about that. To check for any information from your local health department for any local requirements regarding reopening. It doesn't hurt to contact them and find out if there is any additional things they want you to do. And finally, obviously, review and assess and follow the DPH return to service guidance. And we're going to go more over it in detail later with Mandy. Let's go to the next slide. Contacting the water utility is an important step here. Why? Because they can coordinate the flushing activities and the byproducts of it with you and with nearby building owners and customers. Now, in some instances, the water provider, whether it's MDC, Aquarian, Regional Water Authority in this case, the City of Manchester, or whatever, may do concurrent flushing to alleviate water discoloration in the area or to bring higher level of chlorine residual to the area. So that's why it's important to contact them. It's also when you contact them, ask the utility to provide you with the free chlorine residual, pH reading, water temperature measurements near your building. These are important water quality parameters to be aware of when you're going to do a serious flushing of the building. Also, when possible, the water utility may work with you to adjust upward the chlorine residual gain to your area, and that's usually help to bring residual into the building and getting rid of any potential microbial contaminants in the building. Also, when feasible, they can work with you to verify the water quality parameters that I talked about earlier, chlorine residual reading, pH reading, the temperature during the flushing. They have the tools to do that, and they can help if you need that help. Obviously, if they have the resources and the capacity to do it, and Tom will be talking about that later. Maybe also they can assist you in taking the suggested water samples when flushing is completed. We suggest at the end of completing the flushing is to sample the water to make sure that flushing was done correctly. They can probably provide that service for you. And obviously they should be checking on the service meter and the backflow preventers. If some of them are available within your building, you make sure that they are in good working order and accurate. Given I'm talking here about what water utility can or cannot do for you, I thought that at this point we'll have Tom Barger jump in and to relay to you some really important information to consider. So Michelle, why don't you go to the next slide and then let Tom step in and talk about his perspective or the utilities perspective.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And Mike, I'd just like to take a minute to thank you and Mandy and the State Health Department for putting a lot of this information together. Obviously, this is a very important and timely topic, and thank you for the invitation to participate. So just some things from the water utility perspective, as Mike mentioned, there's a lot of considerations here. This may be some information that is somewhat new, to the Board of Education folks. You're not necessarily involved in this type of thing on a day-to-day basis. So, whatever the water utilities can do to assist you in the provision of information, or, some work that needs to be done out in the street, or clarification of some of this guidance, speaking in terms of specific pieces of equipment that may need to be addressed, reach out to the water utility, because I think, speaking on behalf of the industry, many of us are more than happy to do everything that we possibly can to help. Excuse my dog, who's now going to answer the door for me. But anyway, so some of the things that Mike had talked about was things such as chlorine residuals and measuring chlorine residuals and utilization of temperature, kind of as an indice of success, if you will, in doing this flushing program. I think while this isn't difficult information to understand, it takes some time to go through this process and this procedure. And I think the most difficult part of this is understanding when you've reached the finish line, right? So, when is enough flushing enough? When have I accomplished my goal? And I think that's going to be the most difficult part. Temperature and chlorine residual are those two pieces of information that can be utilized to assist you in knowing, when you've gotten there. Speaking on behalf of Regional Water, we have almost 200 schools in our water district. Bandwidth will be an issue if we start to get a lot of requests for information, but certainly I think a lot of the assistance that the utilities are going to be able to provide is informational, right? It's what your expectations should be, how to do this, how to do that. The heavy lift is going to be really on the schools themselves to get a lot of the physical work done. And then informational support from the utility, I think, is what's going to be paramount. There are exceptions to that, however. What Regional is doing is we're looking at those 200 schools preemptively. We're identifying those that may have some problems, from our perspective. Just a couple of examples. I'm not going to name names of schools or communities, but I know that we have some schools with very long service lines. Keep in mind, when you're looking at the plumbing of your school, the plumbing of your school starts at the water main, at the public road. Water that's in your service line does need to be included in your calculations for flushing. So I can think of one community where we have a water service line that exceeds 1,000 feet. That has to be taken into consideration. It's approximately 360 gallons worth of water that's just kind of hanging around on that service line. That needs to be addressed. There's another long setback in another community in Greater New Haven of 1,800 feet. Fortunately, the fire department saw fit to put a fire hydrant up next to the building because they didn't want to lay 1,800 feet of hose line out, God forbid the school caught fire. But in anyway, maybe the utility can help by flushing that hydrant. Maybe the fire department can assist. Department of Public Works may be an option too. So think about in-house assistance that you may have, and I don't mean in-house just in the school. I mean in-house in your municipal arsenal, if you will. You have some help, and don't be afraid to call upon those partners in your municipality that can assist you. So, my first bullet here is include water service line length in your flushing calculations. Very, very important. Let's not forget about that. You don't want to go through the hard work of flushing the building only to bring in more stagnant water. You really haven't accomplished anything. For schools that are on septic systems, be mindful of those septic system operations, right? So if you have a septic system that may have some years on it, you may be aware it's not as healthy as it once was. The introduction of hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water to that system within a relatively short period of time may be overwhelming to the septic system. I know it's been dry, so maybe the leach fields are dry, maybe they have a lot of capacity, but just something to be aware of. You don't want to solve one problem and create another. We talked about temperature and chlorine residual as guides as appropriate. This is a conversation with the water utility too. Let me use an example. So if you happen to be located near a surface water treatment facility, we have one such facility that's right now putting water out into the water distribution system at 82 degrees Fahrenheit. So if that water is what's going to be coming into your building and the water in your building is already warm, temperature change is not necessarily going to be readily discernible. So sometimes temperature is going to be helpful, and knowing when you've flushed enough just by the difference in temp, the water's nice and cool now, so I know that I've displaced the plumbing, but not in all cases. So just use that as something, kind of a question in the back of your mind for your utility. What's the temperature of the water, and geez, is that going to help me make a determination? The other thing I want to mention here, and it's just the last bullet on this particular slide, is Mike mentioned earlier, when you're talking about stagnant water conditions occur after, every weekend and after, holiday and seasonal breaks in schools. The flushing of the school plumbing should be a routine and continual practice, not just the exception because we're in a pandemic. So I would encourage all the water districts that are, the Board of Eds and schools out there that are listening this afternoon, give consideration to, implementing some type of regular and consistent flushing program. We did that in Greater New Haven about 30 years ago. It was called the Junior Water Rangers Program. And I don't know whether we came up with that name or we lifted it from somebody else, but whatever the case may be, it was basically, long and short, we deputized the kids to help in this effort to give them the assignment. Each school gave them the assignment to have the responsibility of running fixtures, water fountains in the hallway or the classroom. And don't forget the water fountains in the gymnasium and the back hallway near the music room or the art space, And in doing that every morning, or at least every Monday morning, you're circulating water inside your school and keeping it moving. Water sitting around in the plumbing doesn't get better with age. We're not talking about wine, we're talking about water. So we have to be cognizant of that. So just a couple of things that I wanted to mention. Again, water utilities can help in every way, shape, and form. Keep in mind that they're kind of burdened because they have a lot of schools potentially that they're responsible for. Work, regular work in the utility continues on a daily basis. So if you need their assistance, I would ask you to reach out early, be clear in your request, and be patient in the response that the utilities can give you. So I'm going to end it there, Mike, and I'm certainly around for questions later on, or if there's a point of clarification that comes up in subsequent slides, I'll be happy to step in.
Great, thank you, Tom. Michelle, you want to go to the next slide? Now, next in line to contacting the utilities, obviously, definitely is a great idea to contact your local health department to determine if any local requirements are really necessary before reopening. One issue like potential microbial hazards that should be considered and really discussed with local health department prior to reopening after a period of building inactivity is mold. We all know mold will grow on building materials where there's moisture produced from leaks or condensation from the roofs, windows, pipes, or from flood. Mold can grow on many surfaces, and We know that kids with asthma and other respiratory conditions and those with mold allergy or weakened immune systems are very susceptible and of concern here. So please ensure that your building does not have mold after prolonged shutdown to maintain a safe working environment for the returning students and the faculty. So check with your local health department about that and follow this CDC guidance, that I showed here in this slide. That's an excellent CDC guidance and have 5 steps that you should follow and have that evaluated. Definitely will be of great help here. Michelle, let's go to the next slide. Now, here are some of the, to really get rid of the contaminants that we talked about earlier due to no water use or low flow water use, you really need to thoroughly flush like Tom was saying, the service line from the street first to your building, and then the entire plumbing system within the buildings. Mandy will be talking a little bit about that in a few minutes. Links are provided on this slide, as you can tell there, about the return to service guidance and how to conduct the flushing. And so again, like I said, we will be talking more about that later. But first of all, if you have a certified operator because your building, school is dependent on its own on-site well, then please have your certified operator in lieu of the building maintainer to take the lead on conducting the building flush. If not, then seek really the help, like Tom was saying, any resources, assets you have within your municipal systems, the engineering departments, licensed plumbers or whatever that can help you, because you need their insight when it comes to doing the flushing and doing it appropriately. The operator and the plumber or the building maintainer should really know the plumbing configuration for your building, water usage, and how water moves in the building. That's very important to do the process and do it very well. Also, they should inspect the plumbing, make sure it's functioning properly and is in good working condition, including a check to those backflow preventers that I mentioned earlier. Without further ado, I'm gonna, for the next couple of slides, I'm gonna turn it over to Mandy so she can go over really the details of the flushing here with you guys. So it's over to you, Mandy.
Thank you, Mike. This is Mandy Smith from the State Health Department Drinking Water Section. As Mike said, I worked to help compile this guidance document. The guidance document was included as a link in this webinar. It's about 5 pages long. And really what you want to do is you want to go through your public or your potable water system, and you want to begin flushing the system from the street throughout the building. One of the most important steps of flushing your building is, flushing in a unidirectional fashion, starting from where, the street, where the water enters your building and moves through the plumbing systems. You want to do it zone by zone. So really pay attention to, the plumbing layout and where branch lines may branch off to serve certain wings of the school. While you're doing that, you want to make sure that you remove the aerators on the faucets and the fixtures. The aerators can trap, when you do a flush, the particulates from inside the pipes, from leftover lead solder pieces, or tuberculation that is built up in your pipes, or scale that has pieces of the actual copper pipes, or can slough off and get caught in aerators. So it's really important, if you can, to try to remove those aerators so that you're not trapping potential contaminants inside the aerators. You also would like to start with the cold water first and then move on to the hot water. They are served by different lines, and so you definitely need to flush both sides of it. And then you're going to start moving into your devices, such as your drinking water fountains, your ice machines, and check for any devices within the school building that have filters, and make sure that you're changing those filters out and checking the status of them, if they do need to be checked or not. Next slide, please, Michelle. You're going to keep on moving forward with any other types of treatment that you have for devices, like if you have a water softener. And then you're going to move on to the hot water pipes and water heaters. In the guidance, there is some general guidelines. So how long you should be flushing for different types of devices, and, you know, for sizes. Again, like what Mike and Tom were saying, the best way to figure out if you're doing the flush right is to kind of know your water quality parameters up front. That's why it's important to know what kind of chlorine residual you have in your system, or the temperature that's normally in the water main, so that you can tell that you are bringing that clean water into your facility. There's a good thing to mention that if you are your own public water system, or you maintain your own water system on site with your own well, that it may or may not be chlorinated. You know, we do not have a requirement here in Connecticut for every system to be chlorinated. If you are a good protected groundwater system, you may not need it. And so in order to get a better flush, you would probably want to conduct a disinfection straight from the wells and make sure that you are carrying a chlorine residual to you know, have some contact time with the pipes that have been sitting stagnant. And we know that not every school has been completely stagnant, but there is definitely a difference between having a small janitorial staff, or maybe the administration using their offices and a couple bathrooms, to every single pipe and every single classroom, and those wings with the student bathrooms or water fountains that are in the back hallway, as Tom mentioned. So you definitely, you know, even though thinking about, you know, the school's been open, we've been preparing some meals, we've been having some teachers come in and out, there are still going to be pipes that have been sitting stagnant for many months. And that extended contact time is really what, you know, degrades the water quality. So the other thing is, when you do complete your flushing, you would want to test at least 1 or 2 samples for total coliform bacteria and a chlorine residual. There is a list, the link of in the I think at the end of page 4, beginning of page 5 of the guidance document does have a live link to the list of certified environmental laboratories that you can contract. Many of you, if you are served by city water, may not have had to work with a laboratory, but maybe many municipalities may have worked with one in the past. So I would reach out to facility managers, your municipality, and work closely with your towns and your local health departments. They can help guide you and provide some additional resources. And I think that's about it. We wanted to make sure that you guys read the guidance document. There's a lot more information, a lot more detailed information, especially on like the kitchen type stuff with ice machines and steam systems and water filters. And you might not just have to do this once. The longer the water's been off, you might have to kind of flush a few days in a row, or do your initial flush to kind of just get the main stuff out, and then just try to refresh every morning for, you know, a half hour or something to that effect. So, and this might not be something that, you know, a janitorial staff has time to do, or may not have had a lot of experience. So really, you know, working with the right people, whether it be a certified operator that your school has contracted with, or if you have a facilities manager for the district or your municipal partners, that's really an important part of it. So I think that's done for me, and I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Okay. Thank you, Mandy. And obviously, you know, like I said earlier, when it comes to the final test of the water, don't be shy to asking the water provider. They may be able to step in and assist you. So so do ask them. I mean, obviously, if they don't provide it, you know. That's their prerogative, and there's, you know, they don't have to do that, but some utilities may offer that service if they have the resources to do it. Then, like we said earlier, you know, stagnant water is not just like Tom said, and I said earlier, stagnant water is not only after COVID or after pandemic. In schools, there is a stagnant water after the weekend. There is stagnant water after a vacation week, and obviously stagnant water after the summer session is over. So after you reopen the school and the building for the fall, EPA, the CDC, and obviously us at DPH recommend that you develop a comprehensive water management program for your building, water system, and all the devices that use water. The CDC developed this guidance. The link to it is here provided on this slide. It's really very good guidance. It is specifically in this case for Legionella, and it's focused on Legionella, but really it can be also used for all the contaminants, you know, we talked about earlier, and tailored for that, let's say for lead. I mean, you can do that. You know, just quickly to give you an idea, this water management program will help you really identify the drinking water taps within your school or building that are at higher risk of being contaminated with lead and the other contaminants we talked about earlier. It helps you develop control measures, you know, to minimize the risk at these taps. Such potentially like routine or periodic flushing. This could be part of the control measures. Helps you devise some kind of a verification process of the success of your control measures, such as occasional testing of the water for lead and other contaminants. And when you test and you find it, you say, okay, then you establish ways to really intervene and correct if the testing maximum limits are not met. Such as, you know, reevaluate your flushing procedure, you know, or replacement of some water fixtures and stuff like that. So it could be something simple that you can do to intervene and make sure that the water will be always safe for our students and the faculty and people using the school. Just remember, you know, our department is ready to provide any technical assistance when you initiate this water management program. If you initiate one, I hope you all think about it, and don't reach out, don't hesitate to reach out and ask for assistance. Let's go to the next slide, Michelle. I think this is it. Yes. In closing, I want to say, good flush will make the water safer for our kids. So please try to do it right. The return to service guidance as part of the presentation here. Other resources are also, we have multiple resources on our webpage that helps you and guide you in these events. You know, if you don't find the answer in the return to service guidance, you're gonna find it in the other resources that we have provided there. So Don't limit yourself to only one. There are 5, 6 different resources that we have provided. Obviously, the return to service, the guidance that Mandy talked about, it was a good summary of all of these guidances that have been released by a number of great organizations. I guess that's it. On this slide, you see our email addresses. If you have any questions, you don't want to ask it today, you want to ask it later, here are our email addresses. You can send it directly to us, to myself, and to Mandy at the Department of Public Health, and to Tom Barger. I'm sure he doesn't mind that, to Regional Water. So I guess now we can open for any questions you have. If you have any questions you want to raise today.
Great. Well, thank you, Mike, Mandy, and Tom. This is Chris Soto from the State Department of Education. I'll be facilitating the questions. You guys must have done a great job because we only have one question. But before we get to that, I just want to remind the participants that this PowerPoint presentation is in the handouts section. You'll see the PDF there. And on slide 8 is where you'll see the links to the guidance documents that Mike and Mandy were talking about earlier. So in case anybody was wondering where to find those documents, you can just download the PDF, which is here for you, and slide 8 has links to those. So I'll start with the first question. This question came from Mike, and it says, what options do we have for testing our water after flushing, and is there a cost associated?
Oh, yes, that's a good question. The one thing we didn't kind of cover, fully here is when you test at the end, probably suggested you test from 2 locations. One in the area where you potentially gonna serve food, the cafeteria area or the kitchen, and the other one from probably the most distal location that is used by the kids in the school and used often. There are, like Mandy said, there are certified laboratories that our agency certify these laboratories for testing water quality parameters, especially for coliform bacteria, the one we're talking about here, and for chlorine residual. And those, we have a listing of them on our site. They do provide the service. If you contact them in advance, that they will send someone directly to your site to take the water samples, or you can make the arrangement with them to get instructions on how to take the sample, and they will help you with that and give you the containers that you need to take the water samples. I hope I answered that question. I'm not sure if I covered everything.
And then the last piece of it just was about the cost associated typically for that kind of testing.
Yeah, that's actually will change from lab to lab, but on average, Tom Barger, correct me if I'm wrong, because you have a laboratory at Regional Water Authority, but for coliform bacteria test and residual, I think it's on average between $10 and $20 a test.
Great. So one of the big questions that we've gotten at the department is about water fountains. And so, I think just the general question is how school districts should approach their water fountains. We've heard everything that people are just going to close them off, all the way to, people replacing those with kind of the water bottle fillers. And then obviously there's also questions around cleaning those water fountains. So could you speak to water fountains in general and any other important things on this topic?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the expert to really talk about water fountains, and what to do with them and what the school choices to deal with water fountains. But obviously, water fountains that are going to be used by the kids, and you're going to make them available to be used by the kids. Okay. those you have to be focusing on those to make sure that they are flushed very well during the flushing process. Somewhere in our return to service guidance, we did say, flush those water fountains for at least 10 minutes. Okay, and obviously, you can flush them and to make sure that you get the appropriate parameters, but at a minimum, you should flush them for about 10 minutes. And if you have a water fountain that you don't trust, that's always been a cause of problem for you, or has been a cause of concern in the past and cause of complaints in the past and whatever, then probably you should isolate that and not make it available for water use during the school year.
Great. And I don't know if they're, oh, go ahead, go for it.
It's Mandy. I was just going to add to that. So there are many different types of water fountains. Some of them have like instant chillers, and some of them actually have a tank inside of them. Some of them have filters attached, the newer ones that you can use for, like the bottle filling stations as well. So it's important to know kind of what age and what style of water fountain you're dealing with. But the take-home message that Mike gave was make sure they're flushed properly, but also if you have any concerns, if making that water available to the children, that's where they're really going to be drinking from the most, that and all the water that's being used in the kitchens. Those are the two areas to focus on the most for water consumption by children.
And Chris, this is Tom St. Louis. I would just add that we are recommending that water fountains not be used in the traditional manner for like mouth to spigot drinking. They can be retrofit, either through a kit you can purchase for, adding one of those cool little bottle fillers with the filter, but also there are retrofit kits for the spigot that can be turned into a bottle filler. But at the very least, you should be directing students to use water fountains to fill bottles only and not for direct drinking.
Great. I think that's definitely the concern that we were hearing. So, appreciate the feedback on the flushing and getting the water fountain prepared for safety, but then also I think the concern about, droplets being transmitted. And so I think your answer, Tom, answers that. And then our next question is from David. Is it the landlord's responsibility to take care of the flushing, or do schools have to chase down the water authority?
It's like we said throughout this webinar, it's definitely the building owner responsibility to do that. Definitely.
Great. All right. Well, that is actually all of our questions. I'll go back to our panelists. Are there any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the group before we wrap up?
Yeah, I want to thank Tom St. Louis for jumping in. It was a water. I did forget about that there is some clarification about the use of those. So thank you, Tom, for jumping in and clarifying that part. I just want to remind everyone that we are available to answer any of your questions. And yes, if you didn't get a chance or the opportunity to ask it today, we are available for you. Here are our email addresses. Please do communicate with us, and we'll be more than happy to. If we don't have the answers, we'll try to get them for you.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And just a reminder for our next webinar is tomorrow, that talks about contact tracing. And so same bat place, same bat channel. And so thank you again for joining us today, and we'll see you tomorrow if you'll be on.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our partnership with DPH, as always. Appreciate it. And thank you for your work out in the field, folks. Have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.